So this is pretty cool to be able to be at home and have some access to some of these things. So I think it's pretty neat to see where we can go through all of this. We only have a few people, so let's see how they come in. We've got about 5 now, and some of the things that I'll be talking to you about is our family's journey through cancer, which has been extensive and not something we expected to do, but it's also something that we would love to be able to do well. It takes a lot to get through cancer, and it's expensive, and it costs, it is a lot of logistics and a lot of taking care of people. And then it's hard to take care of yourself. So what makes our family a little bit different is that I have gone through a 5-year cancer journey. It started at the end of 2015, and then I had my survivorship appointment on April 1st of last year. So we were really, really excited and we're ready to get going. And then in August, late August, my husband was also diagnosed with cancer. And his is a rare blood cancer. He has multiple myeloma lambda light chain. And so the outlook here was pretty bleak. And they had us rush and get the kids home from Camp Pendleton, and we did. And luckily, we were able to have some resources to be able to get him some better care. And you know what? We've only got, there's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us in here. Do you guys want to unmute and we can just have a discussion? Would that work for you guys?
Yes.
Yes. I feel like it's just a conversation, right? We're just having our coffee together. And so I can kind of go through some of the stuff that I've got, and I can show you some pictures that I've pulled up on the computer. We got one more person, but I love to work in small groups, and I think that would be a lot of fun. So if you're willing and able to undo your video, go for it. I think that would be great. Oh, we're having some more people in, so maybe maybe I spoke too soon. Hello, hello, come on in. Okay, that sounds good. You're allowed to stay muted if you're worried about the dogs. So do you guys use Zoom a lot for your meetings and things? Why don't you, down at the bottom, there's some like reactions you can do. So you can like put your hands up, you can clap, and then it'll pop up above your picture. So I would love to see what everybody thinks and what they're doing and where we're finding resonance, because I think that's part of it, you know, is finding where we have points where we can connect with other people so we're not so isolated, and so that we're not so alone, and so that we're not having to shoulder everything by ourselves, because it feels that way sometimes. So why don't you put your hand up if you feel isolation? How many of you feel isolation? Yep, I know you do. What about fatigue? Who feels fatigue? Yep, same here. How about overwhelm? How about some of those? Are there times when you're overwhelmed, when there's just not enough of you to go around? Oh, good. You guys are awesome. I get overwhelmed all the time. I barely made it through my husband's diagnosis without some good medications. So my story is a little bit different. We moved to Idaho well, in 2006, and then we did one stint back in North Carolina for a little bit, and then we came back here to Idaho because this is home for us. and we live out on 10 acres in Wilder, Idaho. So my husband was driving in and working on hot rod cars at Tim's at Qualifab. And then I was doing all the things. This was right before we got sick. So I was going and doing lay ministry up in Payette, and I had the cutest little Hallmark church you could ever imagine. I mean, it was right out of Hallmark, but it needed some change and it wasn't there yet. And so we were thinking, well, maybe there's a way for us to, go ahead and change this church. So in the 18 months that I was there, we grew the church by 18 adults and about 30 kids. And so we were going on track with that. And then at the same time, I had a mentor out of New Plymouth. Her name is Susan Howe, Reverend Susan Howe, and she was at the community church over there. And what we would do is we signed her up with TVCC, and I took an independent study, and then I did an independent film study as well. And then I used my research writing paper to look at things like, why do we have a hunger problem when we live in the Treasure Valley and we're surrounded by farms? Things like that. Just saying, who are we when we're in community with one another? Who are we when we know how to be really good neighbors? Because I think that's something that Idaho does really, really well. I think that Idaho is able to put aside politics and sit at a table with one another and just break bread. And I think that's a fundamental in life. And I really, really hope we don't lose that quality, because it's pretty special. So my husband is, at this point in time, he's working full time for the hot rod shop. We have 3 kids and a grandson now, and significant others, but I'll get to that later. So we had, Carol was in 4th grade, and my son Darby, who is Dennis the Menace, I was on speed dial from the principal, I think, for all the trouble that kiddo gave me. But he is just the kindest, mischievous little guy you can meet. And so Carol's in elementary school, Darby's in high school, and my daughter had just started up at the University of Idaho in her freshman year. And so something that I had been really, really comfortable with this whole time was advocacy, because all 3 of my kids have learning disabilities, and they have them in different ways. And it wasn't until recently that I realized I have some learning disabilities too that I didn't even know about. And so that's been kind of life altering for me in a good way. So we're in the midst of all the things that are family, and we've got kids running this way and that way. And my husband and I were cracking up the other night, and we said, we have been running kids back and forth from school for 12 years for football games. We're tired. And so we're thinking that we have been in the parenthood stage for a long time. And so it was kind of like our turn, right? It was our turn. The kids were older, they're back in school. It doesn't make sense for me to stay home with them anymore. And I thought, this is great. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I want to help people. And so for me, when I say I'm in ministry, what I mean by that is I believe in spirituality, and I think it's found in community. I think that what we're doing here today is deeply spiritual. We're feeding each other, we're filling each other up with hope and with love and with caring and compassion. And so for me, that's it. That's what's I need to do here in this life. I need to help people. I need to fill them up. I need to provide hope where I can. And I think by sharing my story, it should help to inspire some bigger conversations that we need to have here in the state of Idaho. So why don't you raise your hands again, or give me a heart, or something like that. What stage of life were you in when you became a caregiver? Or we can go I can call on you each, and you can unmute and let us know. Steve, you want to go first? Do you want to let us know where you were when you started having to fill in as caregiver?
Well, thank you. Mine is probably a little different than the others on this call. My job is with the Department of Health and Welfare,
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've been supporting caregivers
Yes.
for a long time. I've been with the department for over 20 years. And in 2014, I became what's called a certifying agent for the Certified Family Home Program. So going to people's homes that are caring for their loved ones and receiving payments through Medicaid for that care and making sure that the home was safe and the care was effective. And so really that was just to support caregivers in their role. Um, and I became the program manager here in 2016. So for the past 5 or 6 years, been doing that as on a statewide level, making sure that homes are safe and helping improve the quality of care in homes. And then actually last
Amazing.
year, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So and she cares for my dad, who he's lost his sight and has got some other healthcare problems. So taking on a more active role, trying to help my parents. They're still independent. They live in their own home, but checking in on them often and helping them as much as I can. So that's instilled in me a greater appreciation for those that I serve in a professional capacity, being able to have that more personal experience.
And that's one of the things that Marilyn and the team asked me to talk about was empathy, because I've been in both places, right? And so it's interesting to hear your perspective even further that with the institution perspective plus your own experience. And so I think that's really fascinating. Is there anything that you have seen that happens again and again and again that is just a real crux of a problem for people?
Yeah, and it's something that the Idaho Caregivers Alliance tries to address over and over again, and that's respite for caregivers. It's a 24/7 job, and people they
Yes.
sometimes do need a break. And what I would love to see in the state of Idaho is some sort of a system or a business or something where there's qualified caregivers who can just come into people's homes and give them a break for a few hours so that they can recharge and get back to the caregiving duties that they've taken upon themselves. But having that resource would be just wonderful. I think there's an opportunity in the state to provide something along those lines.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have anything that existing that is similar, that is able to be kind of piggybacked on and adapted, or is this something that has to be task force from the beginning in the dream
Yeah,
vision
yeah.
cast?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. In our certified family home rules, we have uh, requirements for what are considered substitute caregivers. They need to have certain qualifications, current first aid and CPR certification, a medication assistance class, and a criminal history clearance through the Department of Health and Welfare.
Okay.
And so the more and more people we can get with those types of qualifications, then those individuals could serve in multiple certified family homes. So that would be a business opportunity. I think that if somebody wanted to start a business that provides qualified substitute caregivers to this industry, which there's over 2,500 certified family homes across the state.
Wow. Wow,
Knowing,
that's
knowing
amazing.
for,
That's one thing that I have wondered about, because advocacy is such a huge thing too. And it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of organizations that can help you advocate for your care and for your loved one's care. That's something we ran up against. When I got sick, my aunt had just passed and she left a little bit of money for me. And honestly, that's the only reason I lived. Here, they told me that it was hospice and to spend time with my family and that I needed to say my goodbyes. And so my husband came home and he said, that's not good enough. We're not going to accept that just right off the bat. So what we did is I got on the horn and I started calling and calling and calling and calling. And I called every single cancer center from like Idaho to the West Coast, Idaho to the South. And then there were a couple of the big ones, like Mayo Clinic, which we didn't end up going to, but those were back east. And I think that would have been too much of a push. But it's a really, really hard to navigate. And so you're in this position where you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're fatigued, you're in like this total state of stress. You don't know what's happening. And that diagnosis process is brutal. You know, we just kept running into wall after wall after wall after wall. And that's really what makes me passionate about, you know, opening discussions and saying, what do we have? How do we find people? Are there existing groups like church groups or, you know, school organizations that have PTA and things like that already set up that we can go out and you know, give them action and help them fill some of these needs. So that's really interesting that you say that. So we've learned that we were this big family, right? And we'll try and get some other folks in to say some things too. And so here we are, where this is 2015, and we're reeling. I hadn't had health insurance, but what I had been doing, I was running the church full time. I was going to school full time. I was doing extra studies full time. And I felt great because I was helping people, but I didn't feel great health-wise. And I started to get more and more tired, and I started to back out of things that I had as obligations. And so I have always been full of energy, can't keep me, you know, still. I'm always on the way here or there or everywhere. I had a blast raising the kids because we just got to go and have fun and get dirty, and we went all the places, you know. And that all kind of stops when you have that diagnosis. So I was getting more and more fatigued. It was getting more challenging to do my job. I was dropping credits. And the funny thing is that I haven't found anyone who has said to me, yes, I believe your chronic fatigue is something to think about and to do. So 3 years I was doing this whole process, and I had found a lump in my inguinal area that was about the size of a dime. And it was in there for a while, and it kind of didn't move around. It just felt like a, you know, like a muscle knot would feel on your neck. And so I was doing all these things, and I was also doing the alternate path to ministry. So in order to do that in the denomination that I was in, I had to also serve on the conference level board, which was for 37 churches across Oregon, Idaho, and must be parts of Washington. I should know this. And so I was on the planning team as co-chair of their big annual meeting. So I was planning a meeting all year long. We had Zooms once a month, and then we went to twice a month, and then we went to every week. And then the week before we were, you know, we were talking about every 10 minutes, I think. And so we get to this point and this hurdle and all this time and energy and all this effort, and I'm fighting the gals who really wanted to keep the church small and really wanted to do quilting in the basement and make all the decisions. And even though we had done you know, I had written grants, and we had gotten all the materials donated from Home Depot to do a ramp so we could get them up into the church. We went out to a YCAP, and we did like sustainability skills like sewing and making soap and all those kinds of things. And so we're going and we're going, and I'm coming home each day, and I'm just passing out, and I have this little lump. And so I go to my doctor, and he says, oh no, Christina, you're fat. He said, you're fat. It's a fatty lipoma. It's nothing to worry about. 3 years later, I'm the director at the outdoor ministries camp up in McCall on the gorgeous Payette Lake. And I can't do the job. And that was a real eye opener for me. So the following week was when we were supposed to go to Pendleton. So I went into the doctor and I said, I'm not going to make it through the weekend. I'm in so much pain. I'm so tired. By then I had a knot on my leg that was, I mean, it looked from the inside like a plum. But what happened was it was actually melanoma stage 3 cancer. And so what we had missed the years before was that this was a malignant cell. And the reason it was so big and it was full of so much necrotic tissue was it had swelled the lymph system to capacity. And so we had to get treatment. And after calling around and calling around and calling around, MD Anderson picked up the phone and the lady said, "Sure, let me help you." And so they took our insurance, and that's what we committed to do. And we are so grateful that we did that. We just feel so lucky. But it brought to this attention to the fact that you sometimes have to have affluence or means to be able to live. At one point in time, my medications for 1 month were $53,000. So my copay out of that was about $1,000 a month. On top of that, you've got all the travel back and forth out of the state, coming back to the state, then going back out and coming back. And so it was exhaustive. But the good news is I'm here. I'm here. I'm here to live. I'm here to advocate. I'm here to help people again. And so I'm glad we did it, but it kind of put us back to square one. I've got one more person to admit. So I'd love, is there anyone who has any thoughts or something that they'd like to share that kind of goes along with the story that I'm telling? Yeah, no, put your hand up if you want to, and I'll try and find it. I had my son coming to help me, but he couldn't get away from work. All right, so we're ready to go on. All right. So here we are. We start going down to Texas. They put me on oral chemotherapy, so I'm able to come home. And we had to commit to going back and forth to Texas. First, it was every 2 months. Then it was every 3 months. Then it was, it started tapering out. And then the last year, I only went twice. And so they do all the scans and everything. So April 1st of that year, we got my survivorship appointment. And so we were so happy. We were dancing a jig. We were like, yes, 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 yes. And so we're thinking, all right, this is it. I get to dream again. So I did. I dreamed, and I dreamed big. And I'm going to try and put this into the chat so you can see what I'm talking about. If I can find my slides. Maybe. Does anyone have any questions while I'm looking for these? No? No questions? All right. Let's see. All right. So as I started to dream, and I'm going to share the screen now. Sorry, I'm not much of a multitasker. I apologize. My cat is going to try and help us though. Maybe I'll share the screen. Okay, I'll do it this way. So that kind of brings me to this point. And this is a drawing that I did, and this is kind of me as Battle Chicken. And what I'm doing is I am telling anyone and everyone who Battle Chicken is and what she stands for. So we had this crazy little chicken on our property, and she was full of so much spunk, and she outlasted every single chicken that we ever had. And she was super plucky. One time my husband went and moved a nest of eggs that she'd found and laid under his van. And so he threw the eggs out, and I kid you not, that chicken came over and laid an egg in his toolbox every single day for a week. And so this little chicken, the other ones would get attacked by dogs, or we have a lot of coyotes. We live out in the country, we get that. But she just kept lasting. And so she was totally war torn. I mean, she was the ugliest chicken we'd ever had. And she would just come running around. She'd steal mealworms from my husband's workbench. She'd sit there and watch him mill. She'd get up on the property or up on the bike stands and do all this stuff. And so when I got through my cancer, I thought, you know what? I am a little war torn, and that's okay. I am a little bit bedraggled, but I'm here, and that's what's important. And I thought about it as I kind of woke up from the stupor. I mean, some of the things that I did early on were, kind of crazy. Like I swore this one TV show was amazing. And then when I was off of all the drugs, I was like, this is a terrible show. This isn't going anywhere. But for the most part, I kind of found identity in that, and that the process of cancer had taken me down to my core, and it kind of instilled a transformative experience for me. And I started to look at why we did the things we did. What was it that was unique about our journey? Why was it easy for me to, why was it easy? Oh, my program's doing something strange. Okay. Why was it easy for me to live? And I got to thinking about it, and Bill and I did something a little different, and our family did something a little different. And we thought, you know what, we're going to be stuck like this, but that doesn't mean we have to stop life. Houston, when you first get there, if you get into an older hotel, is very, it's a fast-paced town. It's a little gritty. It's a bit dark, but there is so much diversity. And now I have come to just really, really love Houston because of the people. And so we would go and we would get down there, and you'd have to do like 2 or 3 days of scanning. And then you'd have to wait. You'd have to wait for your other appointments to happen. And so what we did is we just got in the car. And at the time I couldn't even walk. Like I could not walk from my bed to the bathroom by myself after the first massive lymphadenectomy. And so Bill would just plop me in the car, and we drove through low country, and we would stop at all these diner drives and movie theaters and just whatever it was we saw that were roadside attractions. And I made him stay in a southern plantation, which was super spooky. And he didn't like that too much. And then I was scared. I didn't get a night's worth of sleep. So we did that. And then we went to New Orleans and we traveled around, and I still wasn't great, but I could get out a little bit more. So he plopped me in the wheelchair at the World War II Museum, and he wheeled me through, and we just enjoyed being together. So we always viewed this time of medical not as just serious, immersive medical, but we switched our mindset. We said, this is our time to romantically reconnect. This is our time to put cancer aside. Yes, we've got our designated appointments, but we can go for a sushi date night, or we can go, and when dinner became too hard, we went and got lunch. And then even now, in the last couple of years, before I got more mobile, it was down to a cup of coffee date. And so we always looked for opportunities to take our heads away from this notion that we have to deal with medical, and we have to carry all that heavy stuff all the time. And it's hard, because how do you do that when you have all these stressors on you at all times? And so I'm going to pull up another slide that I have. And while I'm doing that, if you have a stressor, if you could put it in the chat, and if somebody would read those out loud, that'd be great, while I go gather my other slide. So some of the stressors might be trying to always do the laundry and not having like 5 minutes to sit down and have tea. What about something like that? Or what are some of the things that are real stressors for you as caregivers, as you're trying to balance and handle life every day? Anyone? Is there anyone in the chat? Is everybody coming at this from a professional standpoint? Why don't you raise your hand if you are a home caregiver? Any home? Oh, 1, 2, 3. So we got Mary Allen, and we got Janet Baker, and we've got Lisa T. Awesome. That's cool. So do you guys want to put in the chat what it is that was a stressor for you? Oh, communication. Yep. Single mom with 2 children with autism. Yeah, that's a big one. My son's on PDD, on NOS, on the autism spectrum. It's hard. Communication with your parents. Are they really letting me know what they need? It's that uncertainty. It sounds like it's the uncertainty. And then Mary Ellen, it sounds like it's just a lot to deal with. Would you agree? All right. Yes. You guys are so awesome. This is so cool. I was just so honored to be part of this. I had no idea that this was going to happen. And so just so you know where I'm at today too, because I know you understand this, right? I am coming to this after an incredibly long week of caregiving with my husband, and we're ramping up. We're flying out tomorrow for his care, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's been a lot. And then on top of that, my son had tonsillitis and they became impacted. So away we go once more. And that's how it is, right? It's like you're already feeling like, I feel like one of those plate spinners, you know, who's sitting there trying to keep every single ball in the air at all times. And it can crash so easily. And then it's like, how do you reset? How do you get out of that? How do you find respite? How do you find those pockets of time? And so, you know, as we looked at what we did differently with cancer than some of the other things I've heard, and I would love to hear if anybody wants to email me afterwards or give me a call, I can pop my information up. But I'm fascinated on what it is that people are doing to make this bearable, to make it about living first and about dealing with the hardships second. So I think part of what allowed my husband and I to do this, where we kind of didn't dwell in our illness as much, and we tried to accommodate the best we could, was because we're both super creative, right? I'm an artist. I do murals. I worked at a U-cut flower farm the whole time I was sick, because that was my release. That was my way to feel human. I enjoy flowers, and I was able to just, you know, sit there and take pictures and do brochures and work on the computer. So I really enjoyed that. But it's, you know, it's finding those different ways to really engage and to do that, you know, find those pockets of joy. I saw a hand up. Who had their hand up? Does somebody want to say something? Lisa, do you want to say something? You can unmute if you'd like, or do I need to unmute you? Zoom is so clunky sometimes. I'm sorry. Well, if you figure out how to unmute and you want to say something, then go ahead and do it, and we'll get to you. Or you can type your question into the chat as well. So let's see. Here we are. We are looking at what it is that makes a person live a better life. And my mentor sent me the coolest, and of course I misplaced it. And you should know too, I'm lovable and sweet, but life is hard right now. Life is a little much. And so I'm on full pain management. I wasn't mobile before, but oh, Lisa T, would you like to share something? And hello? Oh, I saw Lisa had her hand up. Oh, no, thanks, you're listening. Okay. I'm trying to keep track of all these things. My helper's bugged out on me. I'm so sorry. So let's see. Maybe what we'll do, if you have questions, why don't you go ahead and put them in the chat, and then we'll run through the chat at the end. And then that way we're not trying to stop and start it again. So, we're looking at creativity. When we went to Houston and we had 3 nights over, we went over to the Alamo, and then I researched and I found that my husband's great grandfather used to live and work at King Ranch as a hay boss. And so he would ride with the Texas Rangers. So we would go out and we found the Texas Ranger Museum. And so it's all about kind of flipping your mindset to say, I'm not acting out of a place of fear. I'm not acting out of a place of overwhelm. I'm still going to have those feelings. I'm still going to experience all that, but there is an alternative. And so we start to look at what are our traditional roles? What is it that we were doing before that we're not able to do now? The roles that I had were spouse, parenthood, I had children and teens and young adults. So how did we adapt? We went to the thrift store. We got the ugliest velvet 70s chairs that you could imagine. And we went and we cleaned out our master bedroom, and we put the TV in there, and we put the chairs up next to the bed, and the kids would come home from school, they'd sit down and they would just have snacks, they'd talk, we'd laugh. And that was a way to adapt and interact so that I could get out of feeling like I was a burden, because that's what I felt. I felt like I was a burden to Bill. I felt like I was taking time away from his family. I was worried that he would start making choices for me. And I would lose my ability to make choices for myself. So there were a lot of scary things that, kind of go along with that caregiving and care recipient. And that was what Marilyn really wanted me to share with you, is what it's like to be a patient as we develop empathy for each other. And I think there's a lot of overlap between all of them as well. Let me go find my other slide. And so some of the things that the overwhelm, I'm overwhelmed because I can't get to the bathroom. I'm overwhelmed because I can't do anything that I love to do. I'm overwhelmed because I'm the one who has always handled the finances and I can't remember anything. And then Bill's overwhelmed because not only is he doing his chores on 10 acres of property, working full time, he's trying to balance, all the appointments. He's having to do my medication management because I don't know what I'm taking. I'm just taking pills, right? And so he's having to stop and start and stop and start. And I think that was one of the things that really became a burden in the long term. If you guys want to pop some of the burdens that you're experiencing in the chat, that'd be great. And then let's see. We already talked about what my life looked like before, and the diagnostic process was awful. And then I had to kind of get comfortable with the fact that I might not be around much longer. They didn't know at the time if they could save me. And we'd been told that we were going to be in hospice. So there's something there that I think both caregivers experience and care receivers experience. I think they both are grieving and they're both letting go of expectations of what they thought their life was going to look like, right? So not only are you stretched thin because you're trying to, handle a job, a lot of times you're trying to handle your normal life. There's no time away, there's just so much and it's so heavy. And I think that it's heavy for the patient too, because I felt this sense of obligation to be happy for my family. So I wouldn't cry in front of them. I'd go in the shower and I'd cry and I'd remove myself. Or I have another picture I can show you where, and this was, I have one part that was the absolute worst part of the entire process. And it was my lowest point. Right before my daughter graduated from U of I, And it took her a long time because she has a disability, right? So what should have taken her 4 years for an average student, although these days you never know, it took her 6 years. And at that time, I had had my 8th surgery, and I had a Roux-en-Y because my leg kept getting inflamed. And the lasting disability that I have means that all that protein-rich fluid dumps right into my leg, and then it hardens. And then I have like scar tissue in there because that protein-rich fluid is what is the waste management system of your body. Sorry, I'm looking for my slide again. And so I think I was talking about being comfortable with death, right? And how you're having to have these conversations. And it's hard. It's really hard. And it's the last thing you need when you're trying to manage everything else that you have on your plate. But I think there's a way to flip the script. I really do. So the song that I have for my husband and myself is Would You Lay With Me by David Allan Coe. And I'm going to try and share this. I wish my helpers were here. I'm so sorry. So it says, would you lay with me in a field of stone? If my needs were strong, would you lay with me? Should my lips grow dry, would you wet them, dear? In the midnight hour, if my lips were dry, would you go away to another land, walk 1,000 miles through the burning sand, wipe the blood away from my dying hand, if I gave myself to you? And we had to have those conversations. So, you know, you don't know what's going on. Your diagnosis is terrible. And you have to have those conversations about dying. And I think it was that made me flip the script. I think it was that moment when I said, I know I'm going to die, but I need to live with intention here and now. And so I have this a great podcast that was from Krista Tippett, and she was talking with Travian Shorters, and it's a cognitive skill to magnify humanity. And one of the things we look at, right, when we're looking at community gathering, and we're looking at building change, and we're looking at kind of creating a systemic thought that's going to take hold and gather people. And so Travian Shorters is a visionary who's seen and named a task that is necessary for all healing and building, for every vision and plan. It's called asset framings. And I can certainly pop this into the chat for you too, because it was a great listen. And so what this guy does, and he's got his credentials on there, but he works with all kinds of institutions, from philanthropy to nonprofits to journalism. And he talks about the way we speak of people when we're trying to help them. And I've seen this because my dad is a minister, and then my mom founded 2 nonprofit programs, written off grants. So she did the Centro de Información, which was establishing trust with the Hispanic culture in the library. And then she also did the adult learning program that taught adults how to read. And so I kind of grew up in this environment of social justice. And then we lived in South Africa too as a child. So I have some pretty cool memories that aren't part of my health story, but they certainly have helped to understand where I'm at and why I see things the way I do. So he talks about how when we get these language together, we come from a place of fear. We come from a place of scarcity. We say, he says that peoples and crises we wish to serve have often been stigmatized and sabotaged because of the way we're wording our phrases. We're saying, and he gave a really great example in this. So he says that he got this belief from his grandparents, and his grandparents were really pivotal in helping him understand love and compassion. And so he's a genius guy. He's grows up in the hood. They find out he's genius. He goes to all these affluent schools, and he starts to learn things, and he starts to really get the bug for social change. But he really thinks it came from his father or his grandfather, because he said that ministry was always a ministry of love. So he talks about asset framing, and asset framing, as he says in this article and in the transcript, asset framing is a direct expression of the love doctrine, right? It is defining people by their aspirations and contributions before you get to their challenges. So whatever it is that's going on in someone's life, you don't ignore it, but you don't define them by the worst moment or the worst experience or the worst potential. None of that. You have to look past their faults to see who they really are. And even the word aspiration, we are very intentional about that because it has the word spirit baked into it. And so he talks about this. He talks about what they want to do is acknowledge the person first, right? We see this all over as well, especially when we're advocating for disabilities and things like that. I have a really dear, sweet friend. Her name is Olivia, and she lives in New Plymouth. And Olivia is a young adult. She's crazy about boys. She is kind, and she's one of the few people out of 5. I have 5 people out of the network that I volunteered in for 7 years with the churches that followed up with me after I got sick. And Olivia was one of them. And she and I had a discussion last night, and she really opened my eyes. And she said, Christina, I'm not doing Special Olympics anymore. And I said, you're not? Why not? And it turns out that she felt like she was being defined only as disabled. And that's why she left the Olympics, even though she sent me pictures of her with Michael Phelps and getting her silver medal at the Worlds. And it's heartbreaking that we do this, and we do it because we need to get those dollars to fundraise, or we need to help people understand how bad it is. What is it really like growing up in a neighborhood that's terrible? What aren't we allowed? What language do we use when we see situations like this? And I think about Olivia, and she told me, I love my job at Family Dollar. I love stocking shelves, and it's something I'm different. I love my chickens. I love to do pottery. I love to cut things on my Cricut. And so I think that speaks exactly to what this mind shift flip that is so important to living is, that you look at what you do have. We did have a weekend in New Orleans, so we went over and we had oysters, and we went to these cool, amazing places. We did have date nights. We did have moments where we connected with one another. And it doesn't have to be big and humongous, and it can be done in 2 different ways. I believe that we can do activities with the people we care for, and we can also do self-care. So we can sit and read books together. We can take a hike together. Olivia and her best friend Laurel take hikes together, and they love being out in nature. And now Laurel is doing a program down in Lake Tahoe where she's marching through the hikes and connecting them with all trails to get accessible hikes in Lake Tahoe. And it's her dream to bring that back here to Idaho because she was best friends with Livy. And so we need to learn to say, I'm not my cancer. It doesn't define me. Bill's not his cancer. Yes, we're going to stem cell tomorrow. We're flying out. We're going to be there for 3 months, and we're going to take care of this. but we're more than that. We're more than that. And I think the hope is what keeps me going each and every day. The hope, even though it's hard, even though I can't do it all, even though I'm exhausted, and we're both, doing rock, paper, scissors in the morning to get Carol to school. It's those moments where we do connect and we try and find as many of the little possible, simple or extravagant. It doesn't have to be big. It can be a heart-shaped rock out of the driveway. It can be a cup of coffee on my way out to something, just to say we're human and it feels good to be human regardless of what our situation is. So I'd love to see if there's any, does anybody want to open up for questions? I mean, we have a couple minutes left. Sorry about that. I talked the whole time. I'd love to hear from you guys and hear what you think about my story, and what would be some things that I could do better or different, or if you had any ideas for us. Oh, you're welcome, Valerie.
My name's Linda, and you're, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
You have a friend who's dealing with breast cancer journey, and it's, I was the radiologist at the time and also her friend, so it was a mixed bag. And she went from having fairly extensive bilateral breast cancer, but it wasn't metastatic, and now it's metastatic in bone and liver. And going along with her journey, she said, at first, I couldn't handle the severity of those people that had metastatic disease, and now she has that. And being alongside her as a friend, a physician who knows it, but also treating her not as the patient, and not always just wanting to know about her cancer. And she's got, young, kids that are still in school and in college and other journeys, and yet still not focusing on the cancer and trying to treat her as my friend and not the patient. And, it's that balance, because you want to acknowledge what she's going through, but she isn't her cancer. And it's sometimes, like you said, you're not the patient, you're not the cancer, but as a person who's the friend, it's a default at times. So
it's hard to let go of that, because you're holding that pain for her. And that's a very giving and deep thing to do. It's hard to shoulder someone else's pain, even if it's for a little bit. I read an article once that said that when people say, I'll pray for you and shake your hand, it's them saying, and that's your problem, right? But when you care about someone and you're in a relationship like you are, you can't do that, because you're hurting for them too. And you want things to be better, and you want to make sure that everything you do helps her get to another day. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too bad about it, but maybe it's worth having a discussion with her to say, what would be something we could do together that we used to do together, or something you've always wanted to do that you can do. I was kind of looking at like all the different mobility levels, because for a long time I was bedridden. So my mother-in-law and I would go out in the morning and we'd have coffee at the little coffee table in the backyard. And then I do all my therapy in my easy chair with a blanket, coffee, and my cat, and I do it off my phone, and it's fabulous. But I think what you're talking about is what this the article that I'll have to get this into the chat for you guys. But when you asset frame, it's a direct expression of the love doctrine, right? This is what he says. It's a direct quote. It is defining people by their aspirations and contributions before you get to the challenges. Your friend has serious challenges, and we don't want to minimize the fact that she does, right? But I think there's a way that you can acknowledge the living spirit in them. And even if it only brings them back to the living with you for a few moments, or, maybe some of you are dealing with Alzheimer's patients where they're in and out, and, those times are precious, and they don't have to be big. It could be something as silly as you guys used to snuggle up on the couch and watch a movie or drink wine, or, whatever it is. Try and maybe find something that would help connect to her as a person first. Steve, did you have something else you'd like to say?
Yeah, just something that impresses me about your story is trying to be a caregiver when you yourself have your own health challenges.
So
And
hard.
certainly that's what my parents are currently facing. My mom was caring for my dad, and now she's going through her own issues. But certainly from my perspective too, during the pandemic, that's been a concern for my industry, is what happens if the caregiver becomes sick with COVID and they're caring for a vulnerable adult. So can you just talk about how you kind of navigated caring for someone else while you yourself are facing your own health challenges?
It is so hard and it's a daily struggle. I think COVID just added this awful, awful layer to everything. We've been put in adversarial positions where ER doctors were yelling at my husband, and my husband was like clenching his fists and yelling back. COVID has done a number on everybody. So I just tell every care team I come in contact with that we appreciate them showing up for us. And that's one part of it, right? But it is a struggle, and it's also defining and finding your pockets of friends, right? You want to be able to find those people that you can call. Like, I have a gal who I call no matter what time of day. Susan will pick up my phone call. And when I was in ER and I couldn't keep the panic at bay, I called her and I said, I don't need to talk about anything, just talk about something. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my poop in a scoop, right? And so I had that person, and I almost like to think of it as Cash Cab. Has anybody seen that TV show Cash Cab, where the guy drives around and it's got lights on the car, and then he's got, okay, phone a friend. Oh, you get a street call out, so they have to guess all these trivia questions. And then they get like these 3 freebies where they can ask for help. And so that's what I did, is I identified who my people are, and maybe some of the people that you're seeing here in the chats and at the conference can be that for you. Go stalk them on Facebook, send them an Instagram. I mean, some of the best people I've met have found me. And I don't even know how to find myself on social media half the time, so I think that's part of it. Is it's kind of like your toolbox and your arsenal. You have your professionals, you need them. I thank God I was under care when Bill got sick, because that was scary. And I got so depleted driving to the hospital, driving back, driving to the hospital, driving back. And so I just have to be careful. And I have to be careful because also I am not very good at boundaries. So even if I'm hurting, and even though I'm on pain management and it may not hurt right now, I know I'm going to be crying in my sleep. And so I try and mitigate it the best I can. And I really build those relationships with people. And then I'm specific with what I want them to do, because people will say, I want to help. And then either they don't help because it's too broad, or, they kind of taper out because you didn't think of something. So I just keep an index card. And I have a note on my phone too of things that people can, do for me, like pick up a prescription at Medicap, or, we loop all our groceries together and we both go and we do that. And then anything I can order into the house saves a lot of energy. And so it's really just a matter of saving as much energy as you can, and really understanding that if I want a house full of beautiful things with trinkets and all this stuff, then I'm going to have to let go of some of the items. And I'm seeing that Mary Allen said something that I did forget to go over. So I was diagnosed in September, October of 2015. I did melanoma stage 3. April 1st was my survivorship appointment. I had gone through 9 surgeries, including an experimental one in Stanford, which was transplanting a lymph node from my clavicle down behind my knee calf to try and heal the lymphedema. So we think we are home free. And that's why I signed up for this beautiful immersion program with Bonnie Christine, where I'm learning surface pattern design. And it's such a kind community. So I'm doing surface pattern design, and Bill is complaining and grumbly. And I almost thought our marriage was over, like something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And I should have known, because fatigue is the one thing that we see over and over and over again. Anyone we talk to who has a big disease, they usually had fatigue, and doctors don't like to listen to fatigue. And so April 1st, we get my survivorship. And then in August, I'd been put on a feeding tube. I had checked out of the hospital to go up to U of I for my daughter's graduation. My mom got put in hospice the next week. My daughter's wedding was a couple weeks after that, away at McCall at Paradise Point. And my son had broken his hand riding back and forth on the irrigation. So we're sitting in the Treasure Valley Hospital, and Bill calls me. We had gone the day before to get some blood work, and they thought he just had some arthritis on his chest. And he calls me and he says, I'm in renal failure. And he called the doctor back, and the doctor said, you don't have time to go home. You need to go to the ER. So he checked in, and the ER in Nampa is where we went, and the residents tour and do the halls and all that. So my husband had to stay by himself because only I could go in with COVID. So I was trying to get home when I was in tired and pain and stress, and then roll out of bed the next day. And it was like harder and harder as it went on. And it turns out that the renal failure was actually a side effect of the bigger problem. So my husband has multiple myeloma lambda light chain. He has a rare blood cancer. And so we're about to fly out tomorrow. He's gone through 4 rounds of chemo here with St. Luke's. And tomorrow we're flying out to Houston for 3 months to get his stem cell transplant. And what will happen there is that he will be given a stimulant to produce more blood. They will do a dialysis type process to pull that blood out of his body. They're going to scrub it, freeze it, and then we both check into the hospital, which I'm not too happy about this, but I think it's the best thing. We both check into the hospital, and he does the heaviest chemotherapy they have. And so he needs to be in the hospital to be able to mitigate infection risk, and also to keep him somewhat comfortable. And so once that's done, we have to stay in Houston for 2.5 more months to be within 25 miles of the stem cell transplant team at MD Anderson. And my husband wasn't going to go at first. And it wasn't until my son told him that, Dad, we spent all this time and money on getting Mom well. And Darby told him, you're no less important. And that's the deciding factor that Bill said, okay, I'll get treatment. But they had put him on palliative care. And so the goal is, I'm glad too, Mary Ellen. I'm super glad. So we have options, and we're lucky. We're really lucky that things panned out the way they did. The money that's paying for all this is my family's money, all that's left. There's not much left now. So it took $384,000 to keep me alive. And we're trying to keep Bill alive on what's left, which is we're down to about 40,000, but I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to be right there. But it's just expensive. It's expensive to live. And that's some of the things I'm guessing that people who are here at this conference, because you work with others who have caregivers, who are caregivers or have need for that. But it is financially devastating to anybody. We did get approved for Halo Housing, which is a leukemia blood cancer unit. And it was built because a young doctor at MD Anderson had a patient who was 26 with 3 young kids, 2 of them babies, a young wife. He had that same multiple myeloma, and he couldn't afford to pay his mortgage and go to treatment. And so he decided that it was time to build a building. And so I called up, and I'm fascinated about fundraising. I'm fascinated about, how we pay for the good work that we want to do, that we're going to reframe into positive asset building language, right? But yeah, they did a really neat thing. So the oncologist mother built the whole building, spearheaded the project. I talked to Bonnie, her best friend, who gave me her cell phone number, and we're going to sit down when we're there, because they did it in phases and they don't own a dime on that building. They built it all by being smart and taking initial donations to build the structure in a third. Then they rented that out to everyday people. Then they built the second and then the third wing. So they did some amazing, amazing things. And I think we all can learn from stories like that. And that's why I'm here sharing ours, because I think there is hope, but we do have to have conversations about our healthcare system here in Idaho, because I shouldn't be able to go to 2 other states and live and here not be able to live. Because what does that mean for someone who's on Medicaid and Medicare? And, I've been there too as a young teen mom. So it's hard, and we've got a lot of influx of people coming in as well. And I think the care team, they get into it because they want to help. They care about people. They want to be there. They're supporting us. They're showing up each and every day. The patients are stressed, but we're still appreciative of the care. So somewhere in there, the system and the structure isn't supporting the reality of where we're at. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next.